Hi, my name is Matt, and holy burnout. With the help of my friend, Sheriff, who I thank pretty much in every video now, thank you, Sheriff, I participated in the GMTK Game Jam this year, which was my first game jam, and you can tell that it is serious because the video I'm making about it, I'm wearing a makeshift tie. For those of you who don't know what a game jam is, it's when a bunch of developers get together and make their own separate games. Now the impressive part is that they're all under the same theme and they're under a certain restriction of time. For GMTK Game Jam, that time restriction used to be 2 days, but nowadays it's 4 days. So basically, we had to all make a game in 4 days. This year, GMTK Game Jam, something that happens every year by the way, managed to break records. They had 30,000 participants, and not only did they break their records of participants and submissions, but also they broke itch.io servers, just like they do every other year. Can you tell that it is the biggest game jam in the world? The theme this year was a single word, loop, which is something that I absolutely despise, especially because of what the word is. I feel that every single game has some form of a loop. So it is very upsetting to get a theme so vague, and it definitely didn't help, and a lot of game developers agree with me on that. But my quirky little game turned out pretty fun and pretty beautiful, and it even managed to get a top 20 in one of the 5 categories in which the games were ranked. So I'm very incredibly happy, especially considering this was my first game jam, but I learned a lot. This game helped me learn a lot, and that is exactly what we're going to be talking about in this video. If you thought that the game jam experience starts with developing a game, you are so sorely mistaken, and that is frankly your first mistake in this video, so I will forgive you. But the game jam experience actually starts with preparation before the game jam even begins. And what do I mean by that? Well, I think I did a lot more preparation than the average person in this game jam. And I'm not throwing any shade here, it's just I like to be very prepared. And maybe that's why I got top 20 in one of the categories, you know. Okay, that wasn't the reason, but you know, I like to pretend sometimes. The way that I personally started preparing is by simply making a small game very quickly. And the idea that I came up with for this small game was Minesweeper with a twist. The twist being that one of the digits is off, so one of the digits will just lie to you and you don't know which one it is. I had a lot of fun working on it, and just like in my actual game jam project, which we will talk about soon, I had some things in this small game that I overlooked, and I actually had to fix in a post-jam update, but regardless, I had a very good result within 13 hours, and I was very happy with it. And even when I shared it with Sheriff, he told me, "You're ready for the game jam," because I made it in 13 hours and I'm very proud of it. And there's a link in the description if you want to, and if I want to talk more about the game, maybe I'll make a short. But anyways, if you think that when the game jam begins, that's when you start game development, yet again, you're mistaken. Second strike, I do not want to see any more mistakes. But the first step once the game jam begins is to actually write down some ideas. It's brainstorming, and Sheriff and I knew that. And before the game jam even began, 5 minutes early, we were already ready. 5 minutes before the game jam began, we were already hurdled in a Discord VC. Although, of course, since we gathered 5 minutes before the game jam began, he was experiencing issues. All the issues occur when you're in a rush, I swear to God. I couldn't hear him at all, but I was like, bro, the stream is about to begin, the theme is about to be revealed, just let me share my screen, watch my screen, you can figure out your mic problems later. And he did, he figured out the mic problems later. And we both gazed upon the theme, which was loop. But anyways, we already had a plan for what we would do once the theme was revealed, and that was to mute for 30 minutes, not talk at all, and just brainstorm as many ideas as we could. And why muting was important was because we didn't want to affect each other's ideas until they were already out on paper. Now once we finished brainstorming and the 30 minutes was out, we began talking to each other about the ideas, and we slowly started eliminating them. But this process, you might think is quick. It is not. Eliminating down to one idea for both people takes so goddamn long, especially when you have discourse about every idea for multiple minutes. It took hours for us to get down to our last idea, because I came up with 19 and he came up with 17. We had a lot of ideas. But anyways, yeah, that's the secret formula. Don't tell anyone. Actually, since I told you the secret formula, now you're like kind of obligated to subscribe, so what are you doing? click on it. It's literally free. But anyways, the result was that we were both left with one idea, and his idea was about tying knots, while my idea was a lot more batshit insane. The idea that I stuck with was my 13th idea, and essentially the sentence for the idea was a guy goes door to door selling loops to people. And that didn't make much sense, neither to me or to Sheriff, so Sheriff asked me, what does that mean? And that's probably what you're asking as well. Thank you for not making another assumption and getting the third strike. Good job. Now, the idea could have been as simple as someone who goes door to door selling things like hula hoops and Fruit Loops or something like that, but I decided to be a little more quirky. I decided to stretch the definition of the word loop a little bit, and I started looking at mathematical concepts, mathematical objects, like Tesseract, the infinite staircase, and you might say, those are not mathematical, and yeah, they aren't, but like, let me call them whatever I want. Why are you arguing about semantics? Seriously, are you trying to get the third strike? But yeah, that was my idea, and I came up with more ideas as time went on. At first, I thought that, oh, he needs to sell these loops or he will die because he was cursed by a wizard. But I actually ended up with a much funnier storyline. Again, you can literally go and play this game right now, so I'm not gonna spoil what it is, but go. It's way funnier than what I just said. But yeah, that's the idea that sort of ended up with the crown, and all the other ones died a miserable death. Now, if you thought that after all that you finally get to get into game development, you're right this time. But I'm watching you. So immediately I started working on stuff, but the first thing that I started working on, which took multiple hours, I actually ended up scrapping altogether. I wanted a mini game, since most of the game would obviously be sort of like a visual novel. So I wanted some sort of a mini game to break that whole thing up, because if I'm just releasing a visual novel, that feels lazy. So the thing that I initially came up with was like, oh, how can I implement some of my other ideas into this? Because at the time I was still sort of stuck in the mind space that, oh, I came up with these ideas, they need to be put to paper. They didn't. I came up with 19 ideas. If I'm killing 17 of them, why not 18, you know? But I was trying to revive my favorite idea out of the list. And soon after I realized no amount of bullshittery would allow me to use a racing minigame in a game about a guy selling mathematical objects to people. So I scrapped that, and I very quickly came up with another minigame idea where, oh, what if this shady ass guy hypnotizes people into buying these objects? And the minigame involves a pocket watch that swings from right to left and left to right, and you just have to follow it with your mouse. But I do want to point out that as I was working on this hypnotizing minigame, Danny Gonzalez posted a video about getting hypnotized. What are the odds? You know, r/never tell me the odds. Actually, I kind of want to know. If anyone can somehow calculate the odds of that, I would love to hear. Before even 24 hours had passed, I already had a working minigame, and I was already beginning to work quite a lot on how level 1 would look. I really enjoyed making some of the animations, since all of them were done with code, and it was actually really fun trying to figure out what would be the most beautiful way. Just look at the knocking animation. Isn't that just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life? Talking of level 1 though, at this point I had already come up with a lot of things that I wanted this game to be. I had already come up with 10 characters, where 2 of the easiest characters would randomly be selected as level 1 of the playthrough, while 2 of the hardest ones would be selected as level 5 of the playthrough, the last level. Everyone else would be randomly dispersed into the, you know, middle 3 levels. Along with that, I wanted the difficulty of the pocket watch minigame to scale, and maybe even gain new mechanics. Like, I wanted, while you were following the stopwatch with the mouse, for example, like a tile would pop up with a character, and you have to mash that character while you're still following the watch. That could have been very fun, but I say that could have been because I also wanted voice acting for the game, and basically 2 days into the game jam, I was done with just level 1 in the minigame, and I realized I needed to scope back. Something that I fortunately learned before the game jam even began. You need to know how much you're capable of, and sometimes you need to cut off some of these excess ideas that would be wonderful to have, but you just don't have the time for. At the end of the day, once the jam ends, you're allowed to update your game again, so if you really wanted those ideas, just add them then. Think about finishing the game for now. That's the best advice you're gonna get for a game jam. Now, regarding the voiceover thing that I was talking about, of course I didn't have time to, get voice lines from all my friends and whatever else, but instead what I did is ask them to say a sentence or two and hold a few vowels, and I ended up undertailing them. So basically, I still use their voices, just in a more creative way that took a lot less effort. And by the way, Merchant uses a soundbite of me, which you might have not realized because it sounds nothing like me. But just listen. You can't say that! Now, along with undertailing my friends, I also decided that instead of 10 characters, which was something I couldn't afford, I would only have 5 characters, so there wouldn't be randomized playthroughs. Unfortunately, it would just be 5 set-in-stone characters, with the last one being the hardest and the first one being the easiest. Now that I think about it, I could have probably made the middle 3 sort of like, random, but I like how I did it. I don't regret how I did it. Now, the last 24 hours were spent doing some art for the prologue and the ending, and I also made some music for the game. All of these things done very late into the game jam, and I'm not super happy with the music especially. Music actually annoyed me when I made it initially, but I just didn't have enough time to make it better so that it wouldn't get annoying over a long period of time, and that is a complaint that some people had. Right as I finished my project, I exported it to a web and a Windows version, and I uploaded the game 12 hours before the game jam deadline was going to hit. It was a very good idea submitting 12 hours early because there was a chance I might have slept through the deadline, and I'm glad that I uploaded 12 hours early because I ended up waking up 2 or 3 hours before the game jam deadline, and yeah, me and Sheriff, we just sort of got into a VC and waited as the game jam slowly hit its conclusion. A game jam will mess you up sometimes. And also, I just wanted to add, I submitted 12 hours early and I'm very happy with that, and I want to anyone who has never been in a game jam or needs to hear this, never submit with the GMTK Game Jam especially, never submit around the end. That's when everyone submits. That's why the servers crash. Stop making it crash, please. Anyways, rating process time. Next segment. The rating process lasts just as long as the submission process, which is 4 days, and Sheriff and I played games throughout that entire process. Every single day we'd sit down and play at least 10 games, and during the rating process I actually got to rate a grand total of 55 games. Now, during the rating process I was actually rating all the games that I liked 5 stars all across the board, while I was just not rating at all games that I didn't like, until Sheriff eventually pointed out, hey, you're being too generous. And the day after that, I actually started giving some games 4-star reviews in some categories. And I think during the entire rating process, I gave a grand total of 2 games 3 stars in some categories, and I kind of feel like a badass for that. Now, as I said, I got to play some incredible games, and I would like to shout out some underrated, underdogs here. First of all, Fisher Cycle. Beautiful animations. This is the type of stuff I would use as GIF reactions on the daily. Look at that cat violently shaking that fish. It is beautiful. Another game that I would like to shout out is Goop Snake. A wonderful and such a nice to listen to brain twister. It is basically, I don't know why I'm saying basically, it's a puzzle game. Very fun. And another one that I'd like to shout out is Loopify. What a beautiful auditory experience. Now, game jam culture is supposed to encourage people to interact with one another, especially because we are all into game development. We share a massive hobby. So I was actually supposed to, interact with a bunch of game developers and a bunch of people, but unfortunately, in terms of social engagement, all Sheriff and I really got to do, depressingly, is we got a small streamer to play our game. Incredible experience. But it's kind of depressing, that's all I have to say about the social aspect. I mean, a lot of people got to review my games, don't get me wrong, and I got to review their games as well. That is a part of game jam culture. They review your game, you review their game. But that's it. But, thank you to that small streamer, W1K Dev. Shoutouts. Thanks for making our day that day. I don't know why I'm talking to you directly as if you're actually watching this. Maybe you are. Hi. And by the way, after the rating process ended, I got 16th place in narrative. 16th place in narrative out of 9,650 games. In the biggest game jam in the world. One of the 5 categories. It's kind of what and well, all I have to say is that this game jam, awesome experience, and I only have higher hopes for the next one. So GMTK, you better not fail. I just want to say very quickly, after the jam ended, I did some updates to the Minesweeper game as well as the Loop Merchant game. Want to talk about them very quickly. In Minesweeper, I added some things that I overlooked initially, and in Loop Merchant, during the review process, a lot of people were complaining about the difficulty of the last Hypno minigame, and along with that, some people were complaining about how difficult the music got after a little bit of hearing. Some people were complaining about how difficult things were to see with the scrolling background. So I added some settings for those 3 specific things that are kind of like band-aid fixes, but I'm still incredibly burnt out. Leave me alone. Just go enjoy the game now. And, if you liked this video, consider subscribing. If you're new here, which you most likely are, I mostly make bots and stuff, but I'm really into game development, and that's gonna start showing soon. Do all the cool stuff, okay? Also, I'm so sorry the mic was visible this entire time. And you should subscribe for sure, because I'll see you in the next video where I will unlean the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Bye!